close, close. Here we go. I think I'm live. I'm multitasking. All right. Waiting for people to arrive in the chat room. That's a start. Oh my gosh. Everybody calls me and sends me text messages and Facebook messages whenever I'm busy, like trying to do a live YouTube video. Oh my. My hair doesn't look quite this gray in person, but it's getting there. Stupid camera on this stupid computer. Evil phone. All right. All right. There. Now I'm telling the phone to shut up, but it probably won't. Easier moderation. Press the Alt key to pause the chat, then point to a message to delete it, block the user, or take other actions. Well, I've never had to do that. I have very nice listeners. Hello, Philip and Oswald. I was going to start the chat a little sooner, the YouTube a little sooner, but I went to reheat a pulled pork sandwich and discovered that I was out of barbecue sauce. So I had to go and get my Sweet Baby Ray's hickory and brown sugar barbecue sauce. I like the honey flavor, but the mini mart around the corner didn't have that. And this is just as good. Anyway, I've opened a document with my notes. It's been a long time since I read VALIS, so I began listening to the audiobook. It's making me crazy. Oh no, they use corn syrup in this? Oh my God, high fructose corn syrup. First ingredients. Well, when this bottle is gone, I'll have to look for a recipe to make my own barbecue sauce. The thing is, then you kind of have to use this bottled smoke, which isn't really smoke, to get the flavor right. I don't have a smoker, so I can't like smoke the tomatoes. Anyway, I imagine one pulled pork sandwich won't kill me. The toaster oven just called me. It rang its bell, but I'll wait a few minutes. All right. Welcome from beautiful downtown Crestline in the San Bernardino Mountains of Southern California's Inland Empire. It's a Thursday, 18th of July, a little past noon. And today we have pretty decent temperatures. Let me check it one more time. It is stupid unlock the phone key. 75 degrees. I like this temperature. I've been pulling weeds and raking weeds and leaves, and it never ends. That's the cost of having a huge backyard where you can plant all kinds of fruit trees. If I were on the tablet, I could show you the massive bunches of berries on my blackberry vine. The fruit trees aren't doing much this year. But that's okay if they take a year off. That means next year's crop will be huge. Oh, and Sleepy Dave Davenport is here. He was a guest on my blog talk show on last Sunday, and I think when I edit this video after it's over, I can put the link for it. I don't think they let you put links in the chat room. I can put it on Facebook right away as a comment on my post. Let's see. Let's see if I can find the link. Yeah. Come on. Here we go. If I just copy the link from the email, it causes all kinds of weirdness. So kind of open the page, copy the link, and close it real quick. And then find my post about this YouTube video and put Sleepy Dave's interview link in the comments. Yeah, I did say this was stuff and nonsense, and it is, but also VALIS. I could not find my copy of VALIS. I read some reviews and summaries and then found the audiobook for free on YouTube, of course. I'm about halfway through it. They've just watched the movie. Here we go. Sleepy Dave Davenport. I'm typing and talking at the same time, so I'm talking what I'm typing. Was on my show last Sunday. Here's the link. There, here we go. That's done. I can. Let's give it a try. Hey, it let me post the link. Yay. I could not sleep last night either, Dave. I don't know what was wrong. I was yawning, couldn't keep my eyes open, but could not fall asleep. Maybe it's all the pollen from the weeds I've been pulling. I had help from a nice young man named Peter Moon. He's a fan of Phil's, and he even bought one of my books on eBay, of all places. And since he bought me lunch, I gave him a copy of um, Conversations with Philip K. Dick. Oh, let's see. Any interesting comments? Oh, Oswald liked Sleepy Dave's interview. Yeah, I liked it too. Not only because it saves my voice, but because it was really interesting. You know what? My radio is on and it's bothering me. Let's see. Come on. I don't have television, so my radio is usually tuned into KFI, the big 50,000-watt station. They have news and they have talk shows, and some of the talk shows are interesting and some of them, okay, I have 5 listeners and 3 chatting and only 2 thumbs up. One of you is slacking off. Dave has to go for a minute. Well, doesn't work, huh? In the premium chat rooms, you can type something like this and get an image, an icon. But not in my chat room because I ain't got no money. Let's see. Um, okay, I'll do this. Choose a stupid smiley. Yeah, let's see. Oh, wow, poor Dave. His roommates never paid any rent. At least they've moved out now. Huh. Let's see. Yeah, I don't let people stay with me. I don't have room. The entire house is 20 feet by 20 feet. Living rooms. My whole house. Of course, I'd have to hire someone to keep it clean, and frankly, I should hire someone to clean this house. I have books in boxes, books on shelves, books on top of furniture, books everywhere. And I'm not getting rid of the books, although some I'm going to give away, or if they're worth something, sell them. But I'll still have at least 5,000 books. Well, maybe only 2,000. Can't help it. I've read most of them and I will read the rest. Now, let me go see if my sandwich is edible. It's still cold in the middle. So the little toaster oven is started up again. I have another no chocolate. I don't know if Hershey's is evil or not, but let's see. Ingredients: milk chocolate, sugar, cocoa butter, milk fat, and lecithin, which is made from soy but not a real problem. It just keeps it emulsified so the oils don't separate out. No corn syrup. And I once met Barbara Hershey. Air, you're not supposed to say air anymore. Air is banned now because it begins with he. So you have to say beneficiary. Come on. ICIARY. Air is supposedly sexist because it begins with he. You know, changing the language is very dangerous. I can see getting rid of insults and attacks and so forth, and true hate speech, which it goes something like, "You're stupid and ugly, and your mother dresses you funny." I have 3 likes now, 3 thumbs up. Thank you. Um, and of course, you shouldn't shout fire in a crowded theater. Who's Jordan Peterson? I'm out of the loop. Anyway, and it is actually unlawful to cause a panic when you know there is no fire in a crowded theater. It's unlawful to threaten people. Of course, to get in real trouble, it has to be a credible threat. So when Jackie Gleason used to say, "To the moon, Alice," it was not a credible threat. First, nobody can toss anybody up to the moon, and second, he never touched Alice. And if you're too young to know, look up the Jackie Gleason show, which was called The Honeymooners. Now, Oswald, who's Jordan Peterson? A famous Canadian psychology professor who got famous after opposing Bill C-16, which would make it illegal for Canadians to call genders by their birth pronouns. Ah, Larry and Preacher is here. Um, Started with three stigmata. Well, if you want to come more down to earth, it's still a conspiracy theory, but I love Radio Free Albemuth. The three stigmata of Palmer Eldritch is like two different drugs competing for the minds of the people, and they're both kind of like LSD. I guess one is supposed to be LSD, and the other, um, oh, that can't remember the name of it. It's made from a cactus that grows in Mexico. Peyote. Ah, ah. So I got to scroll up and get the name again. Jordan Peterson is thought to have taken over from Dr. Leary. And he's on YouTube. Oh, he talks about Carl Rogers. Well, Carl Rogers is not the worst of psychologists, although he's fluffy for my taste. But at least he isn't into behavior modification. Oh, who's that guy who raised his baby in a cage? By the way, she hated her father, and if I remember right, she killed herself. Um, I can picture the book of his that I read too, but I can't remember his name. Oh well, he was pretty much like a Pavlovian psychologist giving advice on raising children and behavior modification. Ah, fascism disguised as hyperliberalism. Yeah, I've never seen anything more fascist than the Antifa people. Uh, they're supposedly anti-fascist, but they act like the brown shirts who worked for Hitler. Yeah, Phil wrote Palmer Eldritch before he ever tried LSD. He had simply read about it. And of course, not long after that, his friend Ray Nelson got him some of the pharmaceutical LSD made by Sandoz and used at UCLA for experiments. And Phil used LSD exactly 2 times, and both times Ray Nelson got it for him. Phil didn't like the first trip, so the second time he cut the LSD with a large amount of sugar so that he could take a teeny tiny dose. And he found it interesting. And the tiny dose energized him as if he had used meth. For about 3 years at the end of his marriage to Anne, his doctor prescribed meth for him, partly because he was overweight and partly because he needed to work long hours to earn money to pay for his very expensive wife and children. Yes, Oswald Pill might have been the first man to microdose. Anyway, after the doctor cut off his prescription, he bought some from Nancy's, his fourth wife, Nancy's brother, and he thought it was maybe cut with a nasty chemical or something because he ended up in the hospital with a case of pancreatitis that nearly killed him. But knowing what I know now about Phil's health in later life and the fact that his children have the same problems, I think it was a coincidence. His children have an inherited problem with their pancreas, and sometimes they're fine and sometimes they're not, and the doctors can't do very much for them. But my son Christopher has had good results with Chinese herbal medicine. Anyway, Phil wrote VALIS after he left me, and I'm still angry with people who think that I left him. They visited his apartment in Santa Ana where he had taken all of our furniture and just about everything of value. He hired a moving van and took everything, and then sat there with all our stuff saying I left him. Yeah, right. You betcha. Idiots. The character Beth in Valis, who, quote, was a bitch, end quote, not unquote, end quote, end of the quote. Um, she's an amalgam of Anne and Nancy with a little bit of me tossed into the mix. Anne scoffed at Phil. Nancy left him taking their daughter Isa, and I shared his Valis experience. And I wasn't exactly like the wife in Radio Free Albemuth. I've forgotten her name again. But it's interesting how Doris Sauter keeps showing up. In Radio Free Albemuth, the character Sylvia, yeah, it's Sadasa Sylvia or Sylvia Sadasa, depending on whether you read the book or watch the movie, or both, so you can get totally confused. She's played by Alanis Morissette. She's mostly Doris Sauter, who did have lymphoma and did miraculously go into remission after the doctors gave up on her and sent her home to die. But she's also a little bit of Sachiko Kananobu. I better type that in the chat room. Sachiko Kananobu. And I'll put in parentheses Williams. She was married to Paul Williams. It, it lasted long enough for them to have two beautiful sons, but eventually their marriage fell apart. But Sachiko was a rock and roll phenomenon in Japan where she was born. She was signed up with a small record company when she was still a teenager, and she's immensely talented. I think she's about my age, maybe a little older, 2 or 3 years, and she's still making live appearances with a full band backing her up. She's amazing. She's gone back to Japan for a sort of a, I can't think of the word, but to kind of relive her original concerts when she was younger. She's appeared in New York, even in Central Park. And Phil financed a recording of her song Fork in the Road, which was done on a 45 RPM single, vinyl record. I used to have the 45. I can't find it now. Well, maybe a reunion tour. I'm not sure. Anyway, Sachiko is tremendously talented and was a good friend to Phil. Paul Williams, her husband, yeah, he did a lot of good things after Phil died. He was the freelance reporter who wrote an article in Rolling Stone magazine about Phil's troubles in 1971 when his house was basically smashed to bits. It was a home invasion, and fortunately, nobody was home. But Paul Williams, frankly, was kind of flaky. It's just my opinion. Anyway, the Sylvia Sodasa or Sodasa Sylvia was partly Sachiko and partly Doris Sauter. Now, in VALIS, we have Sherry, who has cancer and dies. Well, Phil made up the dying part. Doris went into remission, and I forget the exact year, but quite recently she died from um, throat cancer from the radiation treatments they gave her for the lymphoma. She outlived Phil by a couple decades. Anyway, so in Valis, it's Doris, but it's also a bit of Sachiko, but more like Linda Ronstadt. Phil had a big crush on Linda Ronstadt, and yet it was her song "You're No Good" that he heard on the radio after his weird pink light experience. He heard her telling him he was no good. Phil personally was no good and should die. But he was all right. It was followed by Carly Simon's song, "You're So Vain." You're so vain, you probably think this song is about you. And by the way, it is. I'm not sure um, who the song was about, but it was about a guy who had dumped her. All right. Oh, well, Dave, if your mom stopped by, that's more important. This YouTube will be available for re listening. Moms are important people. Even my son says so. I don't know why he thinks I'm so wonderful. I had no clue how to raise a child, but at least he wasn't a girl. I have even fewer clues about how to raise a girl. I just knew before I ever got pregnant that I was going to have a son, and I did. Call it intuition or whatever. Oh my, you can see into my kitchen. Ew. I will be dragging everything, absolutely everything out of that kitchen because the cupboards have to be ripped out and replaced. They've been eaten. We don't have termites, we have carpenter ants, which are like termites on steroids. Let me check my sandwich again. way. Don't give up on me. The sandwich is like